And welcome back to another episode of the Double Doink Podcast. My name is Brendan Deek. Thank you so much for tuning in today, guys. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. It would be greatly appreciated. You can also rate the podcast and review the podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. It would also be greatly appreciated. We are talking strictly Indianapolis Colts today on the podcast, and I'm happy to be joined by Mike Chappell, who covers the Indianapolis Colts for FOX59 and CBS4. Mike, how are we doing?
Pretty good. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Can't complain. I had pizza for lunch, so I'm in a good mood.
I haven't had lunch yet. I'll do that later, but I work better when I'm hungry.
There you go. There you go. So I want to start with you actually quickly, Mike. So how long have you been covering the Colts for?
I started in 1984. I was in Anderson, Indiana, which is about an hour from here. And when the Colts moved here, that's where they held training camp. And then I moved to the Indy Stars. So since they moved here, I've been connected with them. So it's been a long ride.
Was this like when you were coming up in the industry? Was this a dream job for you? Did you want to be a beat writer for this long? Like, is this kind of how you envision your career going, or?
It just sort of happened.
Okay.
Again, I was in the town they held their first training camp, and I was a backup guy for several years. And then the other guy moved on or retired. I can't remember how exactly John left the beat. And I've been doing it full time as the beat guy since like 1988 or 89. And did I aspire to be this? It just sort of worked that way. And then once you get into it, you enjoy it and you just keep doing it until they tell you to quit doing it.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Before we kind of get into the team, I know just some kind of news around the city. So Indianapolis will be the host of the Combine for the next couple of years. Good for the city, bad for the city. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's good for the city. The projections are always, fuzzy. I've talked to the Visit Indy guys, and they anticipate every year it's about a $10 million. It's basically a convention. The city sees it as a convention, like so many others, and it draws 3,000 or 4,000 NFL types with coaches and GMs and all this, and scouts and medical people. And then you've got the 300 and some players. So for like a week, Indy is the epicenter of the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good for the city. It's been here since '87. Indy does it really well. This isn't what's funny is the league. Indy's done such a good job. Jeff Foster runs this. They've done such a good job that other cities want it because they see the exposure you get. Well, this isn't like the draft where you go from year to year and city to city, and you're not taking anything other than the backdrops and all that. Well, with the Combine, you're talking, you need a facility. Lucas Oil, everybody's got a facility. But the way it is downtown in Indy, anyone who's been here, everything is right there. It's right there. It's walking distance. And more important, the medical stuff is right there. So if all these guys, when they get, x-rays or re-exams, they put them in a van and they shoot them 10 minutes down the street. So it works. It'll be here 2 more years. And, the league wants to rotate it, Dallas, LA, whatever. And it sounds really cool to do, but it's just the logistics and all the things that you need to have to make it work. This is still a part of the player evaluation. Yeah. That's what this is for. But it's gotten so popular that it's prime time, it's fan experience. So the league, being what they are, a great marketing tool, they're trying to maximize what Indy's turned this into.
What's not broke, don't fix, right? Like, why move it?
That's the thing. But again, when other cities see how well it works, again, look at how the draft has been so popular, moving from Philly, Chicago, Vegas, and Nashville. That's cool, but you're not talking apples and apples when it comes to the Combine and the draft. But we'll see where this goes. But right now, for 2 more years, it's here in town.
Okay, we're gonna start with a couple former Philadelphia quarterbacks. This is a Double Doink podcast, Mr. Chappell, so we got to start there. I want to start with Nick Foles. He signed a 2-year deal with the Indianapolis Colts. What's your? I know it's still kind of new, so what's kind of your instant, reaction to the Colts?
There were things that they needed to have done. They've addressed a lot of issues in the offseason, but veteran backup was one they needed to do because after you get Matt Ryan, the other quarterbacks haven't thrown a pass.
Yeah.
So then all of a sudden, Nick Foles is released by the Bears, and he was immediately on the Colts' radar. He was. He and Frank Reich, as you know, have a tight relationship that started in, 2017. Mm-hmm. So it's a perfect fit, and it's kind of crazy. And from what I've seen, it's a very reasonable. It's like $2.5 million, $3 million with incentives the first year, so that's very reasonable. And it's an insurance policy. You do this with the idea we hope he never plays.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, and Matt Ryan has missed 3 games in 14 years. But this is a team that believes it's ready to do something. They thought that last year, and they were almost. We'll get to that in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But they think this is with the moves they've made that they're ready to contend at least for the AFC South. And I'm not saying playoffs or bust, but they need to make a strong push. And if they're not competing for the AFC South or a playoff spot in December, somebody will have some answering to do. And the backup quarterback gives you that insurance in case your quarterback goes down for a game or two.
So Nick, the best football of Nick Foles' career was when Frank Reich was calling plays, right? Like when they were when it was a playoff run, Nick Foles, of course, went on an absolute heater in the NFC Championship game in the Super Bowl, and that was a lot to do with Frank Reich, the play calling, the RPO kind of style offense that he ran. So I can easily see why this was kind of enticing for Foles to go back there and enticing for Frank Reich to bring him back in, right? Like it was kind of a match made in heaven.
Right.
So let's kind of move over to the past quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts in Carson Wentz. So we gotta go there, Mike. I'm sorry. But was the Colts moving on from Carson Wentz more his play on the field or the problems he caused off the field? Do you think it was maybe a mixture of both? What's your kind of read on that?
Yeah, both. And I don't mean that to be a cop-out answer, but you can't point to one thing. And, the owner has been, as you've probably seen, vocal.
Oh, yeah.
Probably more so than any owner.
It's weird. I've never seen an owner kind of just call out a past player, even a player on the roster. I think he called them out before they even traded him, right? Like it's kind of unheard of or unseen of in the NFL since I've been following the league.
And I think that speaks to the level of his being PO'd with how last season went. And first, let's just get one thing out of the way. This wasn't all Carson Wentz. The fact that they crashed and burned, the defense played awful in the last couple of games. And Wentz didn't play well. The offensive line didn't play well. It was a collective effort. But the it starts and ends with the quarterback a lot of times, and no one, even Irsay, hasn't got real specific. He throws leadership and all this, which is sort of an ambiguous term, but it was probably more. Well, it's hard to say 60-40, 70-30 on field. The fact that there was enough of both. What people have to understand is that the night of the Jacksonville loss, Irsay called both Reich and Ballard into his office, which they never do. Never. Mm-hmm. From that moment, Carson Wentz was gone.
Yeah.
This isn't something that was going to percolate. We're going to talk about and this, that, and the other. I think it took a little bit of time for Chris Ballard to accept it. Maybe not real long because, he saw things sort of like Irsay did, maybe not to the extreme. And I'm sure Frank needed a little more talking, but this isn't a democracy. This is everybody's vote's not equal.
Dictatorship, baby.
It is, and good or bad. You know what it is, and this was going to happen. What people need to understand also is they were going to cut Carson Wentz regardless, and they did. When they traded him, they were prepared to cut him and eat the whatever it was, the $28 million and all that, and just without knowing who the next guy was. Does that tell you the level of angst by the owner? And then they got the Washington Commanders to step in and give them a couple of draft picks, and oh, by the way, take on $28 million. So I think they deserve great credit for making the best of a bad situation. But keep in mind, they created a bad situation last year by being wrong on Wentz. So it's great they moved on, but they don't deserve a total pass because they went with Wentz last year. And I tell you, a lot of us here were in favor of it cautiously, but we were in favor. We thought maybe this guy can be the long-term answer, and it just didn't work out.
So I kind of what you just said that you're giving them credit for getting rid of him, and that's just kind of chills to my next question. Like knowing what you know now, like so they traded I think they got 2 third-round picks for him, right? And then they
One
traded
can be a second, I think.
yeah. So then they trade a third-round pick for Matt Ryan. Like you are 100% in on what they did at the quarterback position this offseason. Like look, I'm an Eagles guy, right? And I watched Carson Wentz fall apart in 2020, and they didn't look the same. Did not look the same from even 2019 to 2017. I think it's an afterthought now. I think the Colts kind of just maybe wanted him to be the 2019 version, and he just wasn't. Like he still had 27 touchdowns and 7 picks with the Colts last year, right? Like how much better can the quarterback play get is what I'm trying to say. And is Matt Ryan really going to bring you better quarterback play than Carson Wentz did?
Yeah, but because and again, and you're right. The thing that we are always joking in the media room when we're just kind of hanging out, 27-7.
Yeah.
I mean, any owner, any coach, any GM would take that every day. That they would. But over the last like 8, and these numbers are fuzzy because I've got my stats elsewhere, but over the last 8 games, he didn't throw for 200 yards. And the one thing that kind of struck me is when we talked to Chris Ballard when the season was over and things were still fresh and raw, he said he talked with Carson Wentz and he told him, he said, make the layups.
And that's something he was never able to do in field. Like there was a lot of short missed throws, like the running back out route, stuff like that just never worked.
And he I guess to generalize it, he seems like he's really willing and able, and he forces the hero passes, the tough passes, instead of taking a check down and making things easier. And there's things to be said. I'm not saying being a game manager at all, because you've got to make plays. But when it's 3rd and 5, keep the chains moving.
Yep.
And hit guys when they're there. And that just wasn't the case enough, especially late. I mean, at midseason, he was almost top 10 with what he was playing. And then it just went downhill quickly and steadily, and he never came out of it. So, yeah, I think if Ryan goes 27-7, I think he makes more than enough layups to make that way more than good enough.
Fair, yeah.
Yet he's still got the capabilities of the big games, but with the way this team's built, he doesn't need to throw 350 every week, and neither did Wentz for that matter. When you've got that running attack, and one thing that I said, the last 8 games there were 6 games of under 200. This is with Jonathan Taylor. This is with the best back in the league. Teams are crowding the line of scrimmage. It ought to be like 7-on-7 throwing the ball.
Yeah.
And it just didn't work. So it was, I know from the outside we always come back to the 27-7 and, he started all games and he played through injury and this, that, and the other. It was beyond that. And it's always hard for teams to talk about, but the vaccination thing was real.
I agree, and I think that I feel like that must have pissed off Ursay the most out of anything. Like the chaos before the season started. Like look, you can say what you want about the vaccine policy in the NFL, but you're 100% right. It had to have been a big factor in the decision.
But because you're rolling the dice, you just are, and I think what they believe is that the quarterback sets the tone. Wentz wasn't the only unvaccinated player. Darius Leonard, Braden Smith, Eric Fisher, Ryan Kelly, and there were more. And it finally bit them in the rear end at the end of the season when they all get it, and they missed time. And I really think when I looked at the last couple of weeks that this team was mentally and physically spent. And how much of that was coming back from the 1-4 and getting on a roll, and then you beat Arizona and on the road, and everybody says this is a team no one wants to play. But I just think if the quarterback, I think they believe the quarterback sets the tone. He's the leader. And if he's imploring everybody to get – can you imagine Peyton Manning? I mean, this team would have been vaxxed. It would have. And I realize some guys have strong convictions on their own for a lot of very, very good reasons. And maybe some on some teams or elsewhere are followers, and they just do it because, well, my buddy's not doing it, so I think I won't do it. But I really think that they believe that if he had been a stronger leader, the other guys would have followed. And it just, again, that's part of the leadership that Irsay's talked about that wasn't there. And he really believes that if you're the right quarterback, you find a way to beat the Raiders at home. You find a way to beat the absolute worst team in the league on the road. And they were uncompetitive in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
And that was, if there needed to be a final straw, that was it.
I think for 538, the analytic website had them at like a 98.6% chance to make the playoffs. Yeah, with 2 weeks to go. So kind of like the one play that sticks out to me the most is the I think that they were down 17 against Jacksonville, and it was like a deep corner route, and Wentz forced it, and it was an interception. They go to the box, and they showed Jeremy Irsay in the box, like right after I was watching on my couch, just to remember. And I remember saying to myself, like, I don't think he's coming back. Like, I think that might have just dug his grave. Make
the layups, and then occasionally you certainly have to hit the deep ball, just because that's the way the game is.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to be said. And again, I'm not saying be a game manager, but realize when it's the right time to move the change and when it's the right time to strike. And I don't think that Wentz ever, in their eyes, found that balance at all.
So one quick question before we move off Wentz. You've covered a lot of quarterbacks in your time in Indianapolis. Well, maybe not a lot because you had Peyton Manning for quite a while. But what was his personality like? Like, what did you make of just covering him when you talked to him? Like, what did you do something off with them? Like, what did you kind of just make of his, I guess, personality?
We didn't get a lot of personality from him.
Yeah.
And I always try not to pile on once the guy's gone, but he just sort of went through the motions and gave us quarterback speak. We never got a peek into who he really is. And this is after Peyton Manning, who is as calculated of a person as I've been around. But he would give you personality. He would give you some insight. Then we had Phillip Rivers, Andrew Luck, and Phillip Rivers was great. Matt Ryan's been very good. Nick Foles was very interactive. Maybe that's a better word, interactive. And we never got the interactive part of Carson Wentz. Maybe that's just him. I think he was very, I don't know if guarded's the right word, but he just didn't show you much of who he was.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I'm not saying that that's why people are down on him, because if that's how a guy wants to be, fine. But when you're the quarterback and you need to be the face of the franchise, you sort of need to give more of yourself, and he never did that. Maybe that's just his makeup and personality.
It is. Like, I actually watched a lot of his press conferences in Indy because I was curious, and it was the same crap. Not crap might be the wrong word, but same kind of same language. Like, he was very media trained. It almost seemed like, just like you said, going through the motions. So I was just curious your opinion, because I thought the same thing. Like, just watching his press conferences.
And again, to me, that's fine. That's fine if you're doing everything else right.
Yeah. No, fair. Definitely.
So and again, the teams put up with a lot of crap with quarterbacks and players and all this. If they carry on their business and do things the right way, you can put up with a lot of stuff. That's why some guys are still in the league and always get second and third chances. But there was just a disconnect, and I've come to believe from what you're saying that that's simply him.
Yeah,
and I'm sure they'll find out the same way in Washington, that this is who he is.
Okay, let's talk about the current Indianapolis Colts. So I want to ask you about Jonathan Taylor, because in my opinion, he probably had the best running back season almost maybe in the past decade. You can maybe go back like 9-10 years. Maybe you find one that even somewhat matches, but this was the best running back season in a very long time in recent memory. Is it replicable, Mike? Like, can this happen again? Can he kind of go back to the 2021 form? Because again, like, he was on a mission last year.
He started somewhat slow, where it just sort of built up. But boy, once he got going at 100 yards, you're thinking, is that all you got? It reminded me of Peyton Manning. He'd throw for 275 and 2 touchdowns. You say, is that all you got? And that's a pretty good day.
Yeah, exactly.
So Taylor got you numb to what he was doing. And I think it was the greatest running back season by a Colt. And these guys have had some pretty good players, Hall of Famers. He broke Edgerrin James' single season record. And people say, well, yeah, but he played 17 games. No, he broke it in the 16th game.
Yeah.
So he legitimately broke the record. And, yeah, I think he can replicate it. The numbers, I don't know. The touchdowns, was it 18 rushing touchdowns, 20 touchdowns? I think maybe not number-wise he won't, simply because I think they're going to get more from more consistency from the passing game. But he's going to get his touches. Part of his late second half season surge, more carries, more yards, was a reflection that they didn't trust Wentz. I hate to coming back to Wentz. Against Buffalo, he threw for 58 yards. I mean, 58 yards. And against the Patriots, they were on the verge of blowing them out, but they couldn't get the passing game going. So I think that the passing game, if it's more consistent, they won't lean on Taylor quite so much. But what makes him special, what makes running backs special, is 4, 5, 6 carries. You know, they got 24 yards. They're not really doing things, and then they break the 50-yarder, the 70-yarder, and all of a sudden it's a great day. The great running backs are capable of turning 10 yards into 60 yards in a blink of an eye, and that's what he does. Can he stay healthy? That's what you have to worry about. Is running backs get hurt because they get hit. So, but he's durable. He's a good kid. He's a really good kid. So he can replicate it, I guess, but it's going to be difficult.
It's funny. So like, there's a stat that I like to use, EPA per play. So it's basically an analytics stat that's showing how much points you're putting on the board. The Colts they led the league in EPA per rush, 0.065. The next team was the Seattle Seahawks at 0.025. So just to put in perspective, like they lapped the next team like in just rushing ability. Like that's why I was just like saying, like I don't know, like if they can replicate this with a better quarterback play, like you're
well,
laughing, right?
and also again, he's running the last half of the season with the passing game not working, so people are crowding the line, and the offensive line had a bad season. It really did, because they were banged up. You know, right tackle Braden Smith, one of the best at his position, was banged up most of the year. Left tackle Eric Fisher never really got into form, and Quentin Nelson had injuries. So this line never really played to its level. So when it does, I think there's reasons to believe that the running game will be better this year.
Let's stick with the offensive line, because I find the left tackle fight in Indianapolis super interesting from a Philadelphia perspective, because you got Matt Pryor, who the Eagles traded to the Colts. And it's funny, like Matt Pryor's played I guess he's played okay for the Colts. I think he would know more than I would, but he was the 11th offensive lineman on the Eagles when they traded him. Like he had no room in Philly. And the Eagles have a historically good offensive line coach, Jeff Stoutland. So like from him going to Indy and succeeding, I find very curious and interesting. And then you had Dennis Kelly right behind him as well, and Bernard Raymond. And Dennis Kelly is another former Eagle. Eagles famously traded him to the Titans for Dorial Green-Beckham. I'm sure everyone can know how that trade went for the Eagles. But who wins the job? Is Matt Pryor really going to win this starting left tackle job?
It's his to lose to start with. I mean, that's the way it's going to work. They get Raymond in the third round. They think he's played left tackle for 2 years.
Well, yeah, he's Austrian boy, right? He was the guy that's right. He's still he's 25 years old, I believe, correct?
Right.
Yeah,
right.
An older guy. Yeah,
good kid and all that. But I think ideally what they want to have happen is Pryor or Raymond, somebody win left tackle without any question, and whoever loses left tackle goes and competes at right guard. Danny Pinner's going to be the right guard right now, a draft pick a couple of years ago. And you know, Dennis Kelly then could be the swing tackle. He's long in the tooth, but he started 16 games for Tennessee 2 years ago. So, but yeah, left tackle, it's concerning. I don't mind being concerned about the uncertainty at right guard. Left tackle's different. It's you can cover up a lot of concerns. Left tackle, if you've got a weakness at left tackle, we saw last year with Eric Fisher. He gave up a handful of sacks, a lot of pressures, and if a quarterback can't trust left tackle, it's just tough. And I've heard how you got that immobile Matt Ryan. Well, this isn't Phillip Rivers. I mean, Phillip Rivers was a statue. Ryan can move around. You know, he's not Jalen Hurts at all, but he can move around. But still, if you have constant leakage on the left side, you have trouble. So we'll see how it plays out. I would feel a lot better if I had a left tackle that I really trusted, and I don't have to give him a lot of help. That's not where they are. Again, they had so many significant positions to deal with this offseason, and they handled most of them. This is one where you can say they're I don't say crossing their fingers. I'm not going to say that. but I don't think they solved left tackle like they ideally hoped they could have.
Well, I guess their mindset is thinking, right, like we got 3 darts at the dartboard and Matt Pryor, Bernard Raymond, and Dennis Kelly. Hope one of them hits, right? Like I don't think that's not necessarily a bad strategy. I'm assuming a lot of teams do that in different areas, but like you said, left tackle, like you don't, not the ideal position to be throwing darts at the dartboard, more
Right.
that's like a safety job or your third wide receiver, something like that, right? So
Right.
that does make sense. What is the latest on the Kenny Moore situation?
Well, again, he's there, but he's not participating, and I'm guessing that's how it'll be next week in OTAs as well, and then we'll see during the mandatory minicamp. That's not going to work. That's not going to work. That's not going to satisfy the meaning of mandatory, is to be there, be healthy, and watch.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the team does if that's the case. I think that if they find the guy, that accelerates and intensifies the situation. But the team's sort of in a tough situation. He's got 2 years to go on his contract, and yes, he's underpaid. And I'm for players getting as much as they can get it, because when the team's done with you, they're done with you.
Yep.
Well, they gave him this 4-year extension in 19 before he really became that cornerback, and they sort of overpaid early, and now he's underpaid. So I don't know what they do. I think they're not really eager to set a precedent with a guy with 2 years to go, because there is sort of a way you do these things. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if Kenny Moore's the type of guy who's going to sit out mandatory things, sit out training camp. We'll see. Maybe he's just trying to make a point that, I'm not happy. Because it's funny how teams, they always talk up players. This guy's important. I'd hate to see what we can do without him. And we talked about the 3 or 4 areas on defense that you really need. The weak side linebacker with Darius Leonard, the 3 technique with DeForest Buckner, and the nickel corner with Kenny Moore. So you're talking how great, how important he is to you. And then when he says, yeah, but I'm underpaid, it's a difficult situation. I don't know that it's going to get, go to DEFCON 1. I don't think that, because both sides aren't normally like that. We were trying to think when the last time a player actually held out, and I can't think of one. It's probably back in the Manning years. Mm-hmm. But the next couple of weeks we'll find out. The next big time again is mandatory minicamp in the 1st of June, and we'll have a better idea where it goes from there, because we've not talked to him yet.
So I'm going to get you on one last question here, Mike. So you covered, in my opinion, the greatest runner of an offense, the greatest just general of an offense in Peyton Manning. People can say Tom Brady is probably the best quarterback of all time. When I was growing up watching Peyton Manning run that offense, it was surgical, the way he just was able to put people in the right places, put the ball in the right place. Do you have maybe a story about Peyton Manning that you can tell my audience that maybe they haven't heard of before in your time of covering him?
Whenever we come up with like Peyton's top 5 games, top 10 games, there's so many of them that I got a lot of these on CDs because it's just great. I've got the Tampa Bay game when they're down 35-21 with 5 minutes to play. It's simply impossible to come back from that, yet they do. But one of the games I always include, I can't remember what year it was. My books are closed up. They went to San Diego in 2006 or 7 or whatever it was, 8. And they had like 45 players healthy going into the game. They're without Marvin. They're without Dallas Clark. They're without somebody else. And it's Reggie and a bunch of guys. And they get behind. Peyton throws 5 interceptions, ends up throwing 6. And they should have won. This is the game that Darren Sproles returns a kick and a punt for touchdowns in the first quarter. And there's no way they're going to win this. And Peyton finds a way with Reggie Wayne and a bunch of guys, and they should have won. Adam Vinatieri misses like a 26-yard field goal in the final couple of minutes, or they win. That tells you the influence that guy can have on a game. Mm-hmm. It's when you've got that guy, Peyton, Brady, Aaron Rodgers, maybe 5 or 6 guys, you're never out of a game. And the one thing that struck me about Peyton, and maybe the fans don't understand or appreciate it, but the media does, a lot of times, including the San Diego game, it's a late night game, so that we're done at, I don't know, midnight, and we got deadlines. We've got deadlines back when we had deadlines, and he comes out with still got his eye black on, still got his uniform on to talk to us because he knew we had deadlines. How many quarterbacks have the presence to realize, they got a job to do, so we just got beat. I had a bad game. Let's talk to the media. So many times Peyton did that, and from the media, we always said, "Hey, Peyton, appreciate it."
Yeah.
And again, anyone who's been in that situation understands what that means to have a quarterback take 5 minutes to do that for the media.
Yeah, you can obviously quarterbacks have bad games. Sometimes don't talk to the media. It sounds like it was a pleasure to cover, and just congratulations on a terrific so far of your career. I know there's still plenty of years left, but you're great, I guess, idol to people that want to be a beat writer and cover this league because doing this since 1984.
It's a totally different landscape now, but it's fun.
Mike Chappell, please tell my audience where they can find your work.
FOX59 CBS4.com, and then my Twitter is mchappell51, and we just keep plugging away. As long as the check's clear, we keep working.
There we go. Mike, thanks for doing this, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.